Good morning. We had a program redirect. We thank that to Terry and his song leading. Uh, I want to look for just a minute before I start. Gonna look at Hebrews 11 verse 6, just one verse, and then of course I say that and I always bring up other verses. That's okay. We did just sing "Give Me the Bible," so I can do more than one verse. Uh, I'll try not to give you the whole thing right today, but we're going to look at a couple of things. The title of the lesson is "The Truest Measure of a Person," and I want us to look at that, what that is, and I'll actually answer that question or pose that as a question. What is the truest measure of a person? And I'll answer that at the end. But something hit me as we were singing. One of my favorite songs is 350, the "When My Love for Christ Grows Weak." I like that song because it's real. And so I want to take a moment and look at these words um, and look at what it's saying as it pertains to faith and our need for faith and what faith can do and what can happen to us without it, I guess. But I like this song and I like using it as we prepare for communion. Um, because, like I said a while ago, it's real. So look at the words with me just a minute. Lanny, do you want me to run that, or can you got it? Okay. Um, when my love for Christ grows weak, when for deeper faith I seek, then in thought I go to the Garden of Gethsemane. Just chew there for a second. We talked the other day when I filled in for Terry in class, and we did dangerous prayers, and we talked about what would be a dangerous prayer. And praying for patience was one of those things that we don't really want to pray for because that's one we always get slowly, right? And the idea here, even as we sing this song, a deeper faith I seek. When I'm looking for a deeper faith, where do I go for that? The song continues, verse 2. There I walk amid the shades while the lingering twilight fades. See that suffering, friendless one, weeping, praying there alone. Garden, praying, his friends are asleep. Wrestling, because as Johnny described in our union talk this morning, there's something extremely graphic and painful and humiliating about to be a part of his existence. And he is asking God if there's another. But he also understands the reality. And when I'm struggling with a faith and needing a deeper faith, is there a better place to go than to the Garden of Gethsemane and watch Jesus wrestle with his faith? Move on to verse 3. When my love for man grows weak. Does that ever happen to you? You ever get tired of people? There are other times that you really don't love people. I think there are. There are times that I get a little tired of people, and I'm a people person. But you can get peopled out, right? When my love for man grows weak, when for stronger faith I seek. There are times in our lives where we need a deeper faith, and we go to the garden and we need a stronger faith because man has let us down, has failed us and hurt us and made us question and challenge a lot of things because of the disruption they have made in our lives. People do that. That happens. Hill of Calvary I go. Thy scenes of fear and woe. Go ahead. There behold his agony, suffering on the bitter tree. See his anguish, see his faith. Love triumphant still in death. It was his faith that kept those nails in place. Because I assure you, there's nothing on earth that could bind the power of God unless he yielded to it. Because his faith was in something beyond the crisis and pain of his current condition. Then to life I turn again, learning all the worth of pain, learning all the might that lies in a full self-sacrifice. Okay. I'm thankful that we come to the cross. But I'm also concerned and wrestle with, do I bring all my junk to the cross like I'm supposed to, or do I just carry it out of here when I leave? And if I'm carrying it out of here when I leave, then there is a question of faith involved. Because why would I not trust God, trust Jesus with all my junk? Why do I need to hang on? So that brings us to the verse that I want to launch from this morning in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. And chapter 11, I think it's probably a good idea for you to read that chapter every now and again, just for the sake of what it says in the chapter. Because you keep hearing these words, by faith, by faith. Get towards the end and you're seeing some graphic things that these people held on to their faith because they were not yet in a position to see what was to be revealed. And here we stand waiting for the second coming of Christ, not yet able to see, but by faith we endeavor forward because we know that death is powerless. And here's the reality of faith. Without faith, the Hebrew writer says, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. I have to believe that God has my best interest. I have to believe that there is something better, and God has prepared that. And where that begins, my need for a deeper faith, my need for a stronger faith, when I feel that God has left me or I feel that man has failed me, comes at looking and appreciating with great clarity the cost of the cross. And sometimes that is not that easy. You know, I can appreciate and I respect when you see longevity. When people have lives that they've built, marriages maybe that they've built, and it's had its challenges, but nothing earth shattering. And and they're faithful, and I respect that tremendously. But I also respect those lives that if it could go wrong, it did. They went from one wreck and tragedy to the next, and they found a way through their faith to rebuild. Because that, when our faith is tested like that, and the reality is, if we'll appreciate it, the reality is we all have that as a part of our lives at some point. We all have those things that make us challenge and doubt God, and those things that make us challenge and doubt humanity because we feel betrayed. Now, I assure you that does happen with man. Man will betray us. People we know and love will fail us. And just due to circumstances, because of all of that, we may question whether God is there. And that's a fair question. I mean, Jesus from the cross cries out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? But faith carries us through those times. We don't abandon and quit. Going. You know, there's a lot you can learn when you win. But I've been told there's a lot more you learn when you lose. As Christians, we struggle to develop faith in God, and it's never easy to learn to trust Him. There's a lot at stake. Perhaps the most difficult faith to develop is the faith that trusts God to help us overcome our failures, because that is for me the rawest thing, where I have failed and allow God to step into that mess and trust Him then. Because it's at that point that I don't necessarily feel worthy. It's at that point that when I experience failure, and it comes, and every single failure we experience begins in our hearts and in our minds, and it plays with us because it was us who failed. So it is a very difficult thing. And maybe the most difficult faith to develop is the faith that allows God to help us to discover and to address the failures that are within us. We must learn as Christians to trust that God can still storms that rage. That God can strengthen me to endure in trying and demanding moments of my life. And that God can heal what has been broken. That requires me to go that uncomfortable step in my failure, give it to Him. Because God can help me understand what I do not grasp. He can help me see what I am blind to see. He can help me face what I've always run from. But I'm going to have to be still long enough for him to come up beside me. That is the faith that every one of us must develop. Spiritual survival is dependent upon us developing kind of faith that is not contingent upon my circumstance. I can't just have a faith when everything's rocking along pretty good. And when it's bad, jump behind the wheel. I'll let God drive while we're in good weather. It's the last Friday, Wayne and I were in Amarillo. We were fixing to come home, and I said, "You want to drive?" I'll give her more experience driving, and we were in her pickup, and so right about we pull over, and that screechy National Weather Service alert came on the radio. Talking about the warning. So there's a severe thunderstorm at Hereford, moving 13 miles an hour east. Areas impacted will be Hereford and Dawn. I'll pull up on the radar. That didn't look pretty. I said, Elena, so we're going to take the interstate. You get a little interstate driving. We're going to go to Vega and drop down and miss some of that. So I said, it'll be good for you to drive in some rain. And I could see that there was still stuff building on I-40, but I knew if we drove through it, it wouldn't be too bad. So we did. I turned the wheel over, let her drive. She's driving, rain. I said, you might turn your knob, get those wipers. Pretty soon the wipers are going 90 miles an hour. We've got trucks and rain, and this is stuff Monica didn't want to ever hear. But she's driving. She's doing great. And I'm questioning. I gave up the wheel. Yeah, because why? But we do that. See, with Jesus like, oh, it's sunny, you drive. I'll take a nap. It's a little stormy, and it's Jesus. And yet I'm over there going, maybe I better take back over at the very time I should be letting him be the driver. So to finish that story, we turned at Vega, and we come down, we get about 2 miles or so north of Hereford. Lana, you get to drive in ice now because the ground is covered 3 inches deep in hail. There was a wreck. Not sure, we couldn't really see because there was fog. Boy, did she get a lot of experience. But she did a great job, I need to have the kind of faith that when storms show up, and they do, external storms, most of them are in here. Satan will throw stuff at me, but where he really nails me is in here, creating the doubt in my mind and questions in my heart that make me wonder at all. What God is doing. But our spiritual survival is dependent upon us developing the kind of faith that will keep going through the one that is convinced, the faith that is convinced that even though the wiper blades are going like this and you can't see very far and there's trucks and there's rain, that there's sunshine somewhere there. Because we serve a God that's bigger than what we're in right now. I assure you that as Jesus hung on that cross, there was a moment as Satan was continuing to work on him as he was alive. That Jesus would have questioned, will God really reign? have the power to remove myself. Now, it's ironic a little bit today, and maybe this is just how the Spirit works, and I'll attribute it to that. That song hit me that Terry led today, and it redid my sermon considerably. But have you noticed what Song 349 is? 10,000 angels. He could have, but he didn't, because his faith in what God's plan was for his life allowed him to endure the cross. Now, when you flip to Hebrews chapter 12, he says that the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. Because although storms impact our lives, it should not shatter our faith. I often think of Job. What that was like every time the doorbell rang and someone showed up with bad news. Before the day's over, he can't handle anymore. He's lost his kids, he's lost his farm, he's lost everything, including his health. And he's sitting there at his house, picking at his sores. His wife said, maybe you should curse God and die. He has some good friends. They travel. I mean, I got to appreciate his friends. They must have loved Job, because they traveled a long ways during harvest. And you don't leave during harvest, but it was their friend Job. They show up at his house, and you know what they do? Their best encouraging voice, they say, Job, what did you do to bring this on? And the song reappears. I question what God is doing when I question the people who are supposed to support me and they fail me. And I need a stronger faith and a deeper faith. And I recognize that without faith, I can't please him. I have to trust him through this. I have to let him see this through to the end. You know, and we have tons of scriptures. Matthew 6, verse 30, we have the idea about worrying, and he tells them who are filled with anxiety about stuff, what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, all that. You know, he's challenging their faith because they're caught up on something like that. In Matthew 8, these disciples were filled with fear. The storm is overtaking the boat. He's taking a nap. Kind of Messiah would take a nap when his friends are drowning. Well, they weren't drowning. Not yet. It was perceived, right? Now the storm was real. He challenged their faith. Matthew 14, Peter's walking on the water. You know that story. He gets right out there close to Jesus and starts looking at everything but Jesus. And Jesus questioned faith. And I think it's a little, I try to be easy on Peter because I find myself doing a lot of Peter things, jumping in there and realizing, oops, that was a bad idea. But I understand, I want to say, well, at least Peter he was the one who got out of the boat. I wouldn't have done that. I would have been with the other 11. But Jesus is challenging his faith because he did get out of the boat. Why would you get out of the boat if you don't think I can do something? And then when you get within 5 feet of me, you panic. Matthew 16, the disciples misunderstood a statement that Jesus makes, and they thought Jesus was being critical of them as he challenged their faith. People need faith. And in all of those stories, there was little faith when it came to physical needs, um, creating a controlling anxiety. They feared for their survival in the presence of Jesus. They had little faith when they were distracted from Jesus and became afraid. When they misunderstood Jesus, their faith was not there. It's in every area of our lives we need faith, not just for Sunday. It's not just for us gathering together. It's a thing that pulls us through every day. Every area of life I need, in every dimension of our lives, faith. We urgently need to learn how to trust God in all areas of human existence. I don't just trust him when the road is shiny. I don't just trust him when there's a storm. I trust him, period. Good, bad, or otherwise. And that is what I see at Calvary. He had a great ministry. They were amazed. They were excited. Now he's hanging on a tree, and where are they? We live in the presence of a God who forgives. We live in a family of God who powerfully works within us. We are in this together. Folks, we have to have faith. Maybe that begins with me accepting his forgiveness. Learning that we can glorify him by accepting forgiveness. Allowing him to work. Life is going to buck us off sometimes. Maybe a lot, maybe not so many. I respect both where faith is evident. But the truest measure of a person is how they trust God when they fail. I want to encourage you today to think through the song we sang for communion. And to not be afraid of the dangerous prayer of praying for a deeper, stronger faith. It carried Christ from the cross to the throne. And it will carry us home. We can help you in your walk, your faith, whatever your need may be with regard to your spiritual condition. We are a family of God that is serious about us journeying towards home together. And we're going to do it together. wherever you are, let's begin that journey together. Please come now.